I want you to look at the note app on your phone right now, or look at that notebook sitting on the corner of your desk. I know what's in there. It's a graveyard. It's a graveyard of good ideas that never saw the light of day. You have the notebook full of $1 million strategies. You have that whiteboard in your office covered in arrows and circles for that perfect marketing funnel. You have the perfect plan for your new website, the perfect plan for your next hiring process, and the perfect plan for how you are finally going to fire that one nightmare client. Now, let me ask you a question that might be going to hurt a little. How much of that actually exists in the real world? We tell ourselves we are strategizing. We tell ourselves we are preparing. We say, I'm just going to do my research, Johnny. I'm going to measure twice so I can cut once. But if we are being radically transparent, we are hiding. We are hiding behind the shield of perfectionism. We are terrified that if we launch something imperfect, we will look foolish. We are scared that if that font isn't right, or the audio isn't studio quality, or if the proposal isn't a poetic proposal, people will find out that we are frauds. So we polish and we tweak and we wait. And while we are waiting, someone else, someone with half your talent, half your IQ, and a quarter of your plan, it's out there winning. And they're taking your market share and they're signing your clients. Why? Because they understand the one law that trumps all others in business, that action precedes perfection. If you're tired of being the smartest person in the room with an empty bank account, today's your wake-up call. You don't need a better plan. You just need to start walking. I'm Johnny Terra, and this is Go Make a Dollar. To understand the power of imperfect action, I need to take you back to 2012. This was my welcome to the real world moment. I had just graduated from Wayland Baptist University in Plainview, Texas. I had landed my first real job as a staff accountant, and I had the degree, and I had the suit, and I had the job offer. But I was missing one critical component of the American dream. I did not have a car. Now, for those of you in New York or London, you might not get this, but in Texas, not having a car is not like not having legs. Everything is spread out. Public transport in the area that I lived was non-existent. The perfect plan, the smart, logical, professional plan would have been for me to wait. And it would have been, to decline that job start date and to say, hey, I need 3 months to save up money, buy a car, get my insurance sorted out, and then I can show up as a professional. But I did not have 3 months. I had to pay rent. I needed a paycheck like right now. So I looked at Google Maps. My apartment was about 12 blocks away from the office. On a map, that looks like nothing. It's like inches on the screen space. But 12 blocks in a Texas summer, it's not a casual stroll. It is an oven. And we're talking like 95, 100 degrees of dry, dusty heat. The kind of heat that hits you like an opening a furnace door. It sucks that moisture right out of you before you even make it to the sidewalk. So here was my routine. And I want you to picture this because it was ridiculous. Okay. Every morning I would wake up, get fully dressed, business casual, slacks, iron shirt, tie, looking the part of a successful accountant, but not the feet. I would lace up my beat up running shoes. Then I would take my nice polished dress shoes and I would throw them into an old mesh laundry bag that I kept from my basketball days. I would start walking and I remember the sensation of the heat. By block 4, I could feel the sweat trickling down my back, underneath, my starched shirt. And I remember this car whizzing past me, people in their air conditioning bubbles, listening to the radio, sipping their coffee. But there I was, this tall guy, power walking on the sidewalk, trying to clutch a mesh laundry bag, sweating through his suit. And I had this internal monologue running through the whole time. You look like an idiot, Johnny. This is so unprofessional. What if a client sees you? Well, what if your boss drives by and realizes he hired a guy who couldn't even afford a Honda? I would get to the office building 30 minutes early, specifically so I could sneak around the back to the service entrance. I would find a spot on that concrete step near the door. I would sit there, catch my breath, wipe the sweat up my face with a towel I brought, and switch my shoes. Running shoes goes in the back, dress shoes goes on the feet. Hide the bag underneath my desk. Start the day. Was it dignified? No. Was it comfortable? Absolutely not. But here's the truth that changed my life. It was effective. And I did not wait for the Chevy. I used the tennis shoes. I took the messy, sweaty, imperfect solution and I executed. And you know what happened? I thought people would judge me. I thought people would say, I was less than. But my coworkers noticed. They saw the guy walking in the rain. They saw the guy changing his shoes on the steps of the office floor. They did not see unprofessional. They saw hunger. They saw someone who showed up no matter what the obstacle was. That imperfect action built more trust in my character than a luxury car ever could have. That 12 block taught me the lesson that most entrepreneurs spends a lifetime trying to learn. And this is the pivot point for you today. You cannot steer a parked car. Think about that physics. When a car is parked, you can turn the steering wheel all you want. You can crank it to the left, you can crank it to the right, and you can plan the route perfectly. But the car does not change direction. It just sits there, grinding its tires into the pavement. To change direction, you need momentum. Most of you listening right now are sitting in the driveway. You're gripping that steering wheel until your knuckles are white. You are checking the mirrors. You're adjusting the seat. You're programming your GPS. And you're waiting for all that traffic light to clear before you even pull out. And you're waiting for the perfect time. And you say, I will launch a podcast when I have the perfect microphone. I will hire the assistant when I have the perfect instructions written. I will start selling the books and my website so it looks like $1 billion brand. And that's a lie. Perfectionism is a lie. Perfectionism is just procrastination in a tuxedo. You look fancy, it makes you feel responsible, but it's keeping you stuck. I was watching the movie Ender's Game, and it's a great movie on leadership, actually. There's a moment where the commander is talking about saving the world. The stakes literally could not be higher. And he says something that stopped me cold. You don't go when you're ready. You go when you're ready enough. Ready enough. That is the essence of command. And it's the essence of business. If I had waited until I was ready to commute, I would have lost the job. If I had waited until my office was ready before starting my firm, I would have never have walked out the pantry. We have a rule for this in our philosophy, and it's called the 70% rule. It comes from the Marine Corps. And it's a high-level leaders use it everywhere. And it says this: if you have 70% of the information and 70% of the plan, you go. You're waiting for that last 30%, waiting for certainty comes at a cost. And that cost is speed. In business, speed is life. Okay, momentum is oxygen. Why? Because when you execute, when you get something that planning can never give you, it gets you data. When I walked those 12 blocks, I learned the route, okay? I learned which streets had shades. I learned what the dogs bark. And I learned exactly how long it took. And if I had stayed home planning, I would have learned nothing. Stop treating your business like a final exam. Business is a laboratory. You are supposed to experiment. You are supposed to break things. You are supposed to be that crash test dummy. Okay, so how do we systematize this? How do we stop overthinking and start walking? I want to give you a specific tool to dismantle the perfectionism. And it's I call the minimal viable action, or MVA. When you feel stuck on a big project, your brain shuts down because the task is too big and too scary. I want you to shrink the task until it becomes ridiculous not to do it. Okay, so for example, if your goal is build a website, you do not think about designers or color palettes. Your MVA is open the Google Docs and write the headlines for your homepage. That is it. If your goal is to hire an assistant, do not worry about payroll or taxes yet. Your MVA is to take 5 minutes and write the list of 5 tasks you hate doing. That is your job description. Okay? Action feels action. And the hardest part of that 12 block walk wasn't block 6 or block 10, but the hardest part was that first step out of the door. Once I was moving, momentum just kind of took over. Okay? So when you adopt the 12 block walk mindset, the fear disappears. You stop looking for the perfect path because you realize you can handle the terrain. You stop worrying about looking foolish and start obsessing about getting feedback. You become the intentional operator, the person who moves and the person who ships. So here's your challenge for this week. Identify one project you have been planning for too long. One thing you are waiting to be perfect. Yeah, I want you to launch that 70% version of it by Friday. Send the ugly proposal, post the unpolished video, launch the better version. Get in the arena. Get your shoes dirty. Start walking. Remember, grit gets you started, but systems will get you free. I'm Johnny Terra. Let's go to work.